My given name is Specs. And guess who gave me that name? My parents gave me the name Jeff Eaton. And starting in 1948, we were next door neighbors of the Kindlebergers. Wonderful neighborhood. The Kindlebergers were preceded by the Fairbanks family. We said, my goodness, how is it possible when the Fairbanks family moved away, and I think probably one of them is here today, how is it possible that any other family could move in next door to us and be as nice as the Fairbankses? The answer was the Kindlebergers. I'd like to say a little bit about Dick's humor and a little bit about his journalism. But when the Kindlebergers moved next door to us in Lincoln, I was 11 years old and Dick was 6. That little twerp, he became the bane of my existence. And I'll give you sort of an indication of how that spun out as time went on. For example, in the late 1960s, I was working in a biomedical research firm in Waltham. And for those of you with a scientific background, I was doing some paper chromatography. And very quickly, what that amounts to is putting a piece of blotting paper or something like that into a liquid that has in it, let's say, chemicals A, B, and C. And the liquid then rises up into the blotting paper, and chemical A rises to a certain place in that column. Chemical B rises to a further extent, chemical C to a greater extent. So when those chemicals A, B, and C were all mixed together, now you had a way of separating them. So A was down here in the blotting paper, then you have B, and then you have C. You dry the blotting paper, and then the next step is that you take a pair of scissors and cut out the little spot that A has made, cut out the little spot that B has made, cut out the little spot that C has made, and then you have a chance to separate and to characterize the different spots, A, B, and C. Well, Dick came around one day to my laboratory to observe this process, and I explained to him what I've just explained to you. But he saw me there with my scissors, cutting around these little spots, and after a while he summarized it and said, Jeff, you come to work every day to do paper dolls. Dick and I once were involved in a pretty hefty project, moving some heavy equipment someplace. And after we had succeeded in moving heavy equipment someplace, we were pretty proud of ourselves, you know? This kind of stuff. And this kind of stuff, like that. And I did that again, and Dick sort of looked over there at that little, that tiny little pop-up thing. And from then on, he characterized my popper. And he would always call me and say, how's your popper?
How's the
He had a wonderful self-deprecating sense of humor. As I indicated, my given name by Dick was Specs, and that came about when I finally went to college and realized that sitting in the front row was not going to do it anymore, and I had to get spectacles, and from that moment on, I was Specs. That's been translated or transferred to his 2 daughters. I'm still Specs to them, and I'm sure that it'll go on and on and on, so that's how that happened. His humor was playful and skewering, and it made a heck of a lot of fun to be around him. My final comment would be about journalism. When he was working for the Worcester Evening Telegraph for 3.5 years, at some point he called me up, and he was really struggling, I think, to find his way in journalism, to see whether it was the profession that was made for him. And he said, you know, I wake up in the morning and I take an inventory of my body parts to see whether they're all there and how they're doing, and then I go off to work. Ultimately, he worked in the Globe, and as you know, he wrote with great clarity and great economy, and I complimented him on that many times, and I really, really appreciated what he wrote. He also was a mentor Dick wrote me an email, you know, that little punk, why can't he hand these awards around a little bit? Finally, from my nephew, I think my nephew, as a good journalist, summed it up just perfectly. My nephew, Richard Reed, said, and I'm sorry he couldn't be here today, he's in China of all places. Dick said, my nephew said, Dick taught me a lot about journalism, about humor, about persistence, about being a good father, about facing challenges with a quiet courage. I think that summed up